I was spending easily 5, probably closer to 10 hours a month just trying to figure out what was wrong with the books compared to now saving a ton of time, and I actually trust the data that I'm seeing. The more I learned, the more I found that whoever I was working with at the time didn't know. I just couldn't find an actual expert bookkeeper to run my books correctly. In e-commerce fuel, a discussion got started about Finaloop, and I checked it out and was really impressed with how easy it was just to go back and forth with chat support whenever needed to like actually get questions answered. And surprisingly, for the first time, they seemed to understand the questions. So stepping into Finaloop and having e-commerce specific chart of accounts built and ready to go, clean slate, just made it a really easy transition.
Hi, this is Rayla from Finaloop. Join me as I sit down with real brands to hear how they got real-time visibility into the health of their business. These are honest conversations about what works, what doesn't, and why Finaloop became part of their journey. So I guess if we can start with, what you were using for your financials before Finaloop. What was your process like? Do you have a bookkeeper, QuickBooks? What were you, what was your whole setup like then?
Yeah, so from a tech stack perspective, we're using Zero and HUX. We're about like 80/20 as far as Amazon and D2C sales go.
Okay.
So HUX was pretty important with that because of the way
Mhm.
that Amazon payouts all lumped together. So yeah, we were using Zero and HUX for quite a while, but I jumped between quite a few different bookkeepers. Um, to be honest, the more I learned, and I did not come from a background of understanding the numbers, but have learned through trial by fire. The more I learned, the more I found that whoever I was working with at the time didn't know. And so then I'd be on to the next person thinking, okay, like they're the expert, it'll be great. But then I kind of repeated that cycle 4 or 5 times, I think,
Oh,
where
wow.
I just found that like, particularly at the price point that I was able to afford, I just couldn't find an actual expert bookkeeper
Mhm.
to run my books correctly.
So your main pain point before was from the bookkeeper side, meaning you just felt like you couldn't find somebody who really understood e-commerce. Interesting. Okay. So what was the point that you said like, okay, I need to go a different route than the traditional?
It was really just an evolution of struggling. Like I said, the more I learned myself, the more I realized my books weren't being done correctly. And
Hmm.
so I think when I found out about Finaloop, I had just onboarded with a new bookkeeper and was kind of sold a big promise of what it would look like and how great it would be. And then it ended up like I was much more systematized and process oriented than they were. And I might as well have just been running the books myself. And then in e-commerce fuel, a discussion got started about Finaloop. A couple larger brands that I trusted said that they were using it. And I checked it out and was, yeah, both really impressed with how simple it was on a UI and UX perspective, but also how easy it was just to go back and forth with chat support whenever needed, to like actually get questions answered. And surprisingly, for the first time, they seemed to understand the questions rather than just you know saying that they understood them.
Hmm.
I think the other thing was because I jumped between so many different bookkeepers over the 4 or 5 years at this point in time that I'd been in business, my books were a mess. Everybody had tried to clean it up a different way, and the chart of accounts was just atrocious. So stepping into Finaloop and having e-commerce specific chart of accounts built and ready to go, and starting with a relatively clean slate, just made it a really easy transition.
Oh, fantastic. Was there like a specific aha moment or something that you saw as like when you looked at the platform, was there anything specific that you were just like, okay, this is my new bookkeeping home. That's it.
Yeah, I think the way that it was, and it's since kind of evolved with the inventory IQ module that I'm using as well. But thinking back, I feel like one of the biggest things that I saw right away was inventory purchases, and kind of the workflow for that
Hmm.
made a lot more sense, where it was automatically or mostly automatically classifying things as in process versus received. and how that reflected on the balance sheet. Because before it was all this back and forth about where is this product, keeping Google Sheets all over the place with different statuses on orders. It just really simplified that.
Oh, fantastic. And I guess since you mentioned inventory IQ, I'd love to dive into that one a bit. So how are you tracking that information before you joined inventory IQ, before you started there?
We were using a dedicated inventory management system,
Okay.
which overall was a great tool uh, with a few caveats. One, we use a 3PL, and it was really designed, I think it was better suited for people that are running their own warehouse. And there was almost too much capability within it. So it left a lot of opportunities for errors where we might forget to tick the right box or do the right thing in the right order, which could come back to bite us down the road. And then probably the two biggest complaints that I had about it was it did not do FIFO, cost of goods, which just bugged the heck out of me, particularly in super inflationary times like this. I felt like I
Mhm.
want much more of a like in this moment, how are we doing? Not averaged out over 12 months because 12 months is really different nowadays.
Yes, especially if you
Um,
think before tariffs and after tariffs, right?
yeah, exactly. I could be lying to myself for a period of time about
Yeah.
how well I'm doing because I'm averaging out my cost of goods. Um, FIFO was a really big deal to me.
Mhm.
And then let's see the other component of it that just really didn't work for us was um different integrations with different sales channels. Every additional sales channel was an additional integration fee, which
Mm.
just really prevented any sort of testing or experimenting with a sales channel. Because now we not only had to weigh whether or not it was worth the time to test the sales channel, but now we're increasing our fixed OPEX as well.
Mhm.
So that was more of just an annoyance from a cost perspective.
Okay. And when you started with inventory IQ about how long ago?
In September, I want to say.
Okay, and how's that been going so far?
It was rocky to start, for sure. Barack and, I forget the other gal's name, but
You
they
got
were
probably.
yes, they were fantastic. I think I probably put them through the ringer with, my, expectations and desires for it. We went all the way back to the beginning of the year, rather than just starting from that date, which took a lot of work.
Mhm.
But, once we got there, we found that we'd, been over-reporting on our COGS by quite a bit. So improved our profitability just from a paper standpoint, which was a nice surprise, and it really helped me dial in better systems that my team can follow.
Okay, got it. Wow. And now you're using inventory IQ as your inventory management tool completely, meaning that's where you're sending your POs from and tracking all of the costs and all of that is done through inventory IQ now.
Yeah, and I don't think about it as an inventory management tool as much as, like, a cost accounting tool.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's one of the biggest things that I've pushed back, in e-commerce fuel. We've had discussions about it, and I feel like I don't know where you guys land on it. Obviously, you're calling it inventory IQ, but, like, I like that it's not pushing my inventory to
Mhm.
Shopify. I like that I have a different master of inventory, from that perspective, and that I can then reconcile the differences with that and my books separately.
Okay, got it. So you're still tracking from that perspective, you're still tracking your inventory separately.
Yes, I mean, because inventory IQ is not pushing inventory
Right.
anywhere,
Right,
right?
right.
So when we receive a PO in Finaloop, it's not received in Shopify. So we have to receive it in Shopify so that
Oh, okay,
Shopify
got it. That's what
knows that
mhm.
inventory exists, right? But I like that separation. I like that the two aren't connected because it helps us find where the breakdown was. Was it on an
Mhm.
accounting side or was it on uh, a logistics side?
One of the ways I always refer to inventory IQ when I'm speaking with customers, I call it like an out of the box inventory in that it affects everything that's not inside the box. So it won't cause anything to go inside a box. It won't cause anything to be shipped. It won't cause, but everything else in terms of the tracking of the cost, that's what it does.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I guess in terms of just on the day to day, since moving to Fine and Loop, what is your what is your daily, monthly, weekly, however often you're doing? What's your financial process like?
Yeah, so every Monday I pull a spreadsheet of all of our open invoices that I need to make payments on. I import that into a Google sheet. I'm a little nutty probably, but import that into another spreadsheet that kind of runs a script and tells me a number of things from cash flow perspective. And then I make the payments through my bank. So that's 20 minutes every Monday, and then um, I'm in Finaloop pretty regularly, more from a, just, like, using it strategically perspective, more so than, like, from a bookkeeping perspective. But then, at the beginning of every month, I'm generally spending about an hour, just buttoning stuff up from the previous month to make sure everything really closes well. Any remaining questions that are left to me to answer, generally, I'll have it all resolved in less than an hour, like I said, at the beginning of every month. So 20 minutes a week, an hour a month, and then anytime that I'm in there, just like thinking through, okay, what's our ad spend right now? What's our OpEx, etc.
So I'd love to actually dive into that because I think that's something that can be really interesting for people is when you say that you use it more from like a strategic standpoint rather than the bookkeeping side, which by the way is exactly what we want. So that's perfect. But I'm just curious, like, could you walk me through how you use it strategically? I think that that's something that can really add a lot of value to for people to understand how, like, what are you looking at when you go in to use it strategically? What are you checking? What are you tracking?
Yeah, mostly I'm just jumping into the P&L and switching over to a percentage view and comparing where we're at as percentage of revenue, with different categories, both from a monthly basis, but as well as from an annual basis, and seeing if those movements are in the right direction or if there's any changes I need to make accordingly. Um, to be honest, I have not educated myself enough to, probably use the cash, uh, report well enough, or the balance sheet report, to make a lot of strategic decisions other than just saying, "Okay, that looks right. If balance sheet matches what my inventory and my bank account says, and liabilities are in check." But yeah, mostly I'm looking at the P&L and almost using it as a performance dashboard in a sense sometimes, to have an aggregate of all of our sales channels. Because I do have different performance dashboards set up for Shopify versus Amazon, and a couple other channels. But to see everything boiled down into just the raw financials and be able to break that out down in one spot is really helpful from a planning perspective.
Are there any examples of times when you would go into Final Loop, see those numbers, and then based on that, make a decision or make a change or, go back to check something else? Like, is it cause you to actually change your behavior when it comes to the business?
We're gonna have to increase prices in some areas, but we also probably gonna need to look for areas to cut costs, because
Mhm.
I don't think we're going to be able to increase prices enough to absorb the tariff increases. So I'll be needing to look through, mostly OpEx, whether that be people or software, and looking, okay, where can we trim, where can we cut back, and also compare it to, like, okay, we've grown like 60% over the last year. Um, how has that growth? Um, how much has been variable versus non-variable? And being able to look back historically at that and have everything nicely categorized and really easy to view is great. Again, compared to my past setups with bookkeeping tools, it was just too messy to really make those
Mhm.
decisions, because I'd be having to interpret so much of, like, well, what bucket was this? Did it make sense that it was in that? Oh, now I'm getting in the weeds and I need to go recategorize something so that I can actually view it in a way that makes sense. So yeah, I think that goes back to the standardized e-commerce specific chart of accounts makes
Mhm.
that really easy.
Okay, fantastic. Um, I'd love like is are there any specific like obviously this is something that's always much harder for people to come on the call. So if you don't have one, that's okay too. But can you think of any specific, I don't know, like metrics or like something tangible in terms of savings that happened from before when you compare it before to after? So for example, time savings in terms of how much time you spend on your books, or cost savings in terms of what you're paying for bookkeeping before versus now, or specific costs that you only identified because of that breakdown in visibility. Anything like that would be very helpful. Obviously, again, it's if you don't have them offhand, it's okay, but I figured I'd check that one.
Sure. Yeah, I think, so from a cost perspective, I think I'm paying a little bit less than I was with having a dedicated, 2 dedicated tools, both Xero and A2X, plus a bookkeeper. So there's definitely, some cost savings to be had. The bigger savings, honestly, though, is my time. Just the amount of time that I had to spend, and it was probably, much more than should have been necessary just because I don't come from a finance background. Um, but, I mean, I was spending easily 5, probably closer to 10 hours a month, um, just trying to figure out what was wrong with the books and
Hmm.
never fully trusting them, compared to now, it's about the same, maybe a little bit cheaper, but saving a ton of time, and I actually trust the data that I'm seeing.
Oh, fantastic. By the way, this is not directly related to, how you're using Finaloop, but really just something I'd love to hear since you're so plugged into the community and especially when you tell sort of the trend, like the process of how you learned more about finances and how that got you to focus on it differently. Do you feel like now that you've been using Finaloop for a while, um, do you think that a founder or an operator needs to understand finances in order to be able to use Finaloop?
In order to use Finaloop?
Yeah.
No. I would say it would behoove them to, learn finances better, but, I think it is simple enough that a non-finance, person can jump in and, get going with it. I think Finaloop, you guys do a good job with the education piece. Honestly, I wish, it would have been around 5 years earlier because I had to learn through a lot more, fumbling than I probably would have had to. But yeah, no, in short, you could absolutely use the tool, um, and not have a financial background. It would just behoove you to have a financial background from a operating perspective.
Yes. Okay. Completely agree. But that is very helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and then in terms of just, I guess, now since especially since you're using both the Final Loop, core services plus Inventory IQ, what would you say is just your favorite feature or the one that you use the most often or that you find the most helpful for your business?
It's basically re-saying what I've said, but, the P&L with a simple chart of accounts, um, that I can actually drill into, but don't have to drill into to make decisions is fantastic. On the inventory IQ side, the the fact that everything that I know purchases and bills are being tied correctly together and that goods are then being automatically deducted from cost of goods sold on a per unit basis by sales channel is fantastic. Just the fact that I don't have to think about it. And if there is an error, if there is a problem, it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly. IQ will say, you're negative this amount of units. Obviously, that's not possible. Let's figure out what went wrong and where it went wrong to
Hmm.
fix it.
Okay, fantastic. Anything else you think people should know before using or while using or anything like that in terms of their experience with Final Loop?
Yeah, I think the two biggest things that stand out to me is just the quality of customer support. Um, Super fast, super helpful. I never get the impression that like I'm asking too much of them, uh, and they are always able to solve the problem or answer the question, whatever it may be. And sometimes those questions aren't even, specific to Final Loop. They're just like, hey, what is the best way to do this from a accounting perspective? Not like tax advice, but just like hey, can I spread out? I don't want to screw up my books just from a um P&L view structure on this recent purchase. Does it make sense to spread it out over 12 months since it's this type of purchase? And they'll give me a clear answer that I never would have been able to figure out on my own in the past. So that's super helpful. The support's just fantastic. And there's just always new features rolling out.
Well, really, thank you so much. This has been like super helpful, both in terms of understanding a little bit about your experience, but also just in terms of letting me pick your brain on the additional stuff. So Really, thank you so much. This is again been super, super helpful. And of course, if you ever need anything, you let us know.